City Council voted against approving the mayor's appointment of Angela Caldwell to the Board of Police and Fire Commissioners. WGEM's Charity Bell joins me in studio now with details and what happens next for the board that represents police officers and firefighters in the city. Charity?
Daniel, tonight there was a tie between aldermen in favor of the mayor's appointment and aldermen who were not. One alderman voted to abstain, so the mayor voted yes to break the tie, but it wasn't enough with an alderman absent tonight. Aldermen and Quincy residents have both called for more transparency in the mayor's decision for his appointment. Mayor Mike Trope says he issued an apology via email to aldermen to explain why he made his decision and why he went about it in the manner that he did. Trope says he reviewed Caldwell's history and saw a need for her experience on the board. He says she would have been the first woman to sit as a member of the Quincy Board of Police and Fire Commission.
None of this has anything to do with, Angela's character. She's caught up in a really crappy political situation. Personally, I think she's going to be fine for the job. And Mayor, I did appreciate the email that you sent. In the future, I hope that you communicate that a little bit more clearly a little bit sooner.
What the mayor's responsibility is also established by state statute, and that's not changing. So the mayor has the power to appoint or reappoint. The commissioners do the hiring, discipline, and firing for both police and fire. None of that's going to change.
The current Board of Police and Fire Commission also attended the meeting tonight. Former member Carrie Anders says the mayor claims the police department is short officers and new perspectives will result in hiring more officers, but says the mayor has created challenges for recruitment, not communicating well with commissioners and not spending enough time with the police department and officers watching their responsibilities. He says the mayor should also be investigated during his investigation into the current police chief. Board Chairman Barry Chain expressed his concern that the mayor lacked communication with commissioners whose appointment terms were coming to an end.
So I welcome that investigation. I hope it goes well. But I also got to remind people that
3 minutes.
Okay, he was part of that. Well, he should be part of the investigation too. He was part of the process. They're investigating the process. Let it be.
I have great concern over the lack of support for Steve Meckes's reappointment, the same concern we had for Carrie. This approach smacks of personal vendetta against the two who have given their very best for the commission, the two departments and their city. I don't think the mayor's feel for change is a pertinent standard or criteria for change.
Former Police Chief Rob Copley also attended the meeting tonight in favor of the Police and Fire Commission, stating public safety is important and they've all taken it seriously. He continued on to state that the Board of Commissioners have remained professional and non-political. Charity Bell, WGEM News.
Thank you, Charity. Trope believes if all of the aldermen were present tonight, they would have gotten the 8 votes he needed for the appointment. He says he has not made a decision on who he will appoint. He says he still likes Angela Caldwell as the candidate.